How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Lab Podcast. And today our special guest is Pat King. He's the Soil King. He's a Ganjier. He's building multiple brands, including Rosin Tech and a bunch of others. I got a lot of respect for this guy. I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's really, I'm on the #1 podcast of the year right here. Like, where would I not want to be? And watching James Loud and where I come from, this is my stomping grounds. And, this is where I started growing weed as a young kid right here. So it's exciting to be here. Thanks for that. And on the Rosin Tech thing, I'm just a partner with Sam in that, partner that Sam's grinding it. I'm building these other businesses, and that's my homie right there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us about Soil King, because I hear Soil King from all over. And there was this confusion of King's Mix and Soil King. And I'm like, wait, these are two different things.
That's a good story. It's a laughable story.
Yeah.
Royal Gold are they're friends of mine. I love the whole crew, the owner, my friend, all of them. And so we used to go up to Spare Time Supply and do a horseshoe tournament contest. And the Soil King team was just wiping the floor every year. We lost finally, but that was an inside joke. Was the Soil King, it was like, screw you, we're going to come out with the King's Mix, right? As a joke. Next thing you know, here it showed up. So if it was anybody else, I'd be, who knows? There's plenty of room in the game, but
totally.
But it felt good having, that was a good move.
Yeah,
it was definitely a good move, and they're definitely a company that I ride shoulder to shoulder with, no doubt.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I love those guys too. I think there's a good group of community, especially Humboldt, Mendocino. It's just the Emerald Triangle, and the ones that are left. Everybody just, we all smile at each other.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's just not to get off subject, but I'm driving through coming here. These are my stomping grounds. This is where I this is where the 13-year-old boy within right here was coined. And, I was growing weed in Niles Canyon, Wybell Winery, Mill Creek Road by Ohlone College at 9, 10, 11 years old. I was arrested in Fremont for the first time in handcuffs for growing weed in a pine tree. Wow. And this has been my stomping grounds. I was homeless as a kid. I'm built by my story. So I'm not ashamed of anything. Or I'm totally built by all that in my life. And so coming back here and just kind of reminiscing and seeing, where I started from was pretty cool. And this little whole strip downtown right here. Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, I love it here. And it's like, we're a step away from Oakland. It's a little bit safer.
Yeah.
Oakland's a little crazy right now. But totally. So let's dive into your history.
Yeah.
When did you start smoking? When did you fall in love with the plant?
I was living in Fremont, California. I didn't have a lot of discipline in my life. Had really no discipline in my life. So I hung out with the older crew, right? And there was a stoner crew back then. And they loved me as a kid. And those were my people that, took me under their wing. And so my first memory is hands in the soil growing strawberries. And so I've been cultivating everything since I was a kid. I still do. That's why my biggest thing is there's no segregation in agriculture. I'll say it for the back of the room back there. There's no segregation in agriculture, man. Cannabis is a botanical just like anything else. And, botanicals save lives. This way they segregate this and make it a higher commodity and more taxes, just a bunch of bullshit. But getting back to my hands in the soil as a kid, it was about 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. I started smoking weed because it was cool. I was hanging out with an older crowd. And I remember one day I was probably nine years old, and they'd have zigzags were around back then. I'm 56 years old. So this is in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And 70s actually, and going into the 80s. Yeah. It was like 79, something like that. And the Columbia weed everything was seeded back then, no matter what. Nobody complained about seeded weed back then because there was no such thing as non-seeded weed back then. So we'd break it up, brick weed or whatever it is on an album cover, like a Led Zeppelin album cover or and then you tilt the album cover and you take the zigzag card and you hit it and all the seeds would drop on the ground. And for me, I was a little entrepreneur back then, and I'm thinking these fools are paying money for lids, 4-finger lid, remember back in the day. And I'm like, I can grow fucking anything already. So that's where it all coined, man. Next thing you know, I was growing weed and I was selling it to everybody and had my own 4-finger lids. And that's where it coined. And I was 11 years old growing weed in a pine tree, and the neighbor saw me. I figured if anybody's going to see weed out, in a field, they're going to see me walking out there. But as a kid back then, there was no like Nintendo and video games. We did forts, we climbed trees, we did all that. That's what we did every day.
Right.
And so I figured if I'm up on platforms, people would just think it's a fort. I kind of built it all set up like that. And the neighbor, I was watering. I'd take, milk jugs and stuff and pull them up, and I was watering. And the water was going through, hitting the ground and making noise. And a neighbor a little ways away, he's looking at me. And fuck, it was 45 minutes later, man. The cops were there throwing handcuffs on me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was when my first stint doing time for this plant. The next time was 1 year later. Same tree, same mistake. And that's where I learned the outlaw shit from that point on. You got to diversify. You got to figure it out.
Switch it up a little.
Yeah. Insanity's repeating the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it started for me, I would say.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for the seeds that came out of the weed back then, like the Mexican, the Colombian, wherever else we were getting it from, Acapulco, all these different varieties. A lot of the genetics were actually good. They just weren't grown to the best of their ability, and they grew them with very little inputs, and they mashed them all up and they pressed them and made them look ugly. But I think the genetics were there. Like you could pop the seeds like you were doing and actually get really good flower.
Yeah, totally. I mean, back then was Afghanistan white. There was Hawaiian. There was Columbia gold, obviously, Acapulco gold. What else was there? Oaxacan. And so I still have seeds. Yeah. Maybe that's a project we can work on together because I can't bring them back. But my brother, Bill Rogers, not blood brother, but he, we raised each other together. Lives in Iowa now. His mother passed away about 10 years ago. And as I went to the funeral, I came out and he comes down from upstairs and he says, I've been keeping this for you this whole time. And it was, I remember Jack Daniels used to have a tin where you open it up and the Jack Daniel bottle was in it.
Totally.
And so that tin was like the most special thing ever, right? It was our stash boxes. And he comes down, he goes, you can have this, but I'm keeping the tin, right? And so I open it up and there's all my seeds.
Wow.
From a kid. He had all of them. So there's all these notes. And I'll bring all these out. I'll send you pictures of them. All these notes, super skunky, right?
Yeah.
I even have notes of like extra seed because when I was cultivating back then, I didn't know, there's nothing to read about male and female plant, right? There was nothing like that. So really a female plant was always pollinated with some seeds in it.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I remember growing up Mill Creek Road on the side of a mountain, just crushing it in berries and oak trees. And next thing you know, I see these plants and they're male plants. I'd never seen a male plant before. I'm like, this thing is no good. Like, what is going on here? And that's kind of the evolution of understanding the plant, at that point. It's pretty interesting being a young kid trying to figure that stuff out.
Well, yeah. And discovering all these new things, and it's when you have somebody telling you about how to do stuff, it's so much different than learning stuff on your own.
Yeah.
As far as accessibility to knowledge, it's amazing what's out there.
Yeah.
Now we have the internet. We have a lot of people we're able to talk about it freely. Before you couldn't talk about it. It was like if you did, you could get arrested for talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no access to knowledge other than me saying, I had a hard upbringing and I didn't really have much. And I was homeless as a kid as well, too, living on my own.
Yeah.
But I had to hustle. I'm a born fucking hustler when it comes to that. And so when I saw the opportunity, I seized the moment. And, I've made money my whole life off cannabis. The only time I really didn't is when I got out of San Quentin and everybody told me that cannabis was a gateway drug back into, I'm a recovered addict and that would happen. So I raised my kids and I, for a decade, I didn't do shit. And I got a little over a decade, I quit because I was afraid of really fucking up my life or fucking up the kid's life that I brought into this world. And what I come to find out, I'm green and sober today, super proud. And the plant is my medicinal side of recovery. I'm not pharmacy, not the pharmaceuticals they throw down your throat. For me, I'm green and sober and proud of it.
Yeah, me too. In fact, I cut out alcohol the last month and I feel a lot better.
That's awesome, brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to do. I got some guys that we follow along on the podcast. I follow their podcast. They've been cleaning us over for years, and it's impressive. And it's a social thing. So it's not easy to break that trend, but when you're not going out and hanging out with everybody all the time, it's also a lot easier.
It's totally easier, man. I mean, you go into a barbershop, you get a fucking haircut. You go hang out with the boys in the bar, you're getting drunk, right? You wouldn't have this if you weren't the type of individual you were building stuff like this, right? Yeah. You hang around those type of people that can lift you up in life.
Yeah. What is there the saying that if you hang out with 5 smart people, you're probably the 6th. And if you hang out with 5 stupid people, you're probably the 6th. I think that goes on and on and on. Yeah, for sure. And it's you're the average of, there's the other one that's you're the average of your friends. So makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. In business, for me, I have my mentor, Dr. Gray Reed, he's called the Millionaire Mentor, and lives in San Diego and has a secret knock and do a bunch of cool stuff with a lot of cool people. But it's an entrepreneurial, business mindset group of guys, and they've all hit the wall, seen hell, rebuilt back up, bankrupt, and here they are sitting at top right now. So the message I got, and I really hone into it, building up the businesses again after my collapse is everybody I put at the table has to be smarter than me in a category.
Yeah. Right.
Because I can't do it all. And I can't even lie to myself and say I can. Like, I'm good at my shit, and that's it.
You're speaking my words. I feel the exact same way. I'm good at what I'm good at, but I work with the people that are the best at what they're good at. Mm-hmm. And together we have the best team, right?
Exactly.
And that's how you build businesses. That's how you build things that last. That's how you build things that are successful, for sure.
I think Sam and I, we experienced a lot of this. When I first met Sam, my partner from Rosin Tech.
Oh yeah, he's been on the show.
Oh yeah, that's right. He has been here. He said that I'd be impressed when I came in here. Yeah, he didn't lay me down on that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Just talking about the structure and the hardcore business, Sam's hated me at times. I've hated Sam at times. And I love Sam and he loves me. And that's just the relationship. At the end of the day, this industry destroys relationships, period. Right. So nobody had the right assets or roadmap for success because it never happened. And there was no successful roadmap to be had.
Right.
Right. At the end of the day, you put it all in, you live for passion, and you cross your fingers. And we just happen to be a couple of dudes that are still standing,
Yeah. And you got to understand how to pivot. I think that's the other thing, that like when something's not working, there's ways to pivot and also double down on what you're good at. Like if you're good at something, keep doubling down on that, know? And I think, and Sam's good at business. We do the Dabadoo together. We did the event for Mila, and Sam, we ran it really well. For such short notice, Sam came and saved me for the event, to be honest.
Yeah, awesome.
And and we're looking forward to doing another one this year. And it's great working with people like Sam who are very organized, but also is a team player in the sense that he knows how to manage, but he has guys. His right-hand man is amazing. It's like these guys crush
Paul.
it.
Yeah.
Paul is great.
Yeah, no, we learned that. Those are hard knock, situations that you learn. Again, we started this conversation at bettering the table with better individuals, and in areas that you fall short on. And Sam and me, we went through complete hell. And at the end of the day, we looked at each other and said, well, we can do this together. We don't need money. Everybody's at our throats. Everybody's trying to sue us. We can fight this. We can do all this stuff. And we said, let's fucking go, man. Me and him shoulder to shoulder. And from that point on, we realized no matter what, we're a solid team in this industry. And there's a lot of things coming out. And when I turn around and I'm scared or not feeling it or don't know how to get through something, I can call Sam, same with me, and say, look, man, this is some, untouched waters right now. This is what I'm feeling. And Sam's like, man, you got this.
Yeah.
And we got this. Look at what we've been through. Look where we're going. And same thing with me and him. I call him. I'm like, bro, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I'm straight proud of you. Like, you made it through that shit. That last jungle with a lawsuit on the Puffco situation, man. I'm like, balls deep. My brother, Sam, he saw it. He went for it. He never gave up. I would say he outplayed the table too. Totally. He outplayed it, and he deserved it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting with business and there not being any sort of playbook and kind of making it up as you go along.
Yeah.
And I think, it's one of those things that like you have to believe in yourself so much, even when other people don't believe in it. As long as you believe in it, that's what really counts. It's an amazing thing. And we're in an amazing time in the industry because we have had a lot of friends fail and we have had a lot of friends suffer. And, before it was people were going to prison for the plant. The government was now they're being, taken out of the industry because they can't afford to be in the industry because there's no profit, especially on the cultivation side. And it's really sad. Some of the best cultivators out there are struggling because I would love to see them be successful. That's why I'm not a cultivator. I love growing and I think it's amazing, but I also see that I can work with cultivators. I can work with the best cultivators out there and I can really focus on genetics.
That's for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Living soil and producing the best
picks and shovels
rosins and solventless and the picks and shovel side of this. And I still own the cannabis side of it too. I mean, I'm really diversified in this industry. And like you said, man, I think in Mendocino County back before Prop 64, there's over 11,000 farmers in application to become licensed, right? We got duped. We got totally taken advantage of. What are we at now? Dozen? Yeah. Like, come on, man. Like we lost, and that's just licensed. That's not unlicensed, right? The whole Emerald Triangle was built off unlicensed. So you look at the generational farmers and the family of people that I grabbed the belt loop that taught me, everything are no longer around anymore.
Right. And we're talking about very devotional farmers that believed in the plant, that believed in what they did, and also grew really good flower.
Exactly.
And that's the sad part is when
they grew everything.
Yeah. For everything, for sure.
You remember going up north and, like Area 101, or we have everything was a barter trade.
Yeah.
There's people trading leather. There's people that got raw milk. There's eggs. There's veggies. There's cannabis. There's, pottery. There's edibles. There's just, and it's all barter trade. It's like, what do you got? Well, you got that. I want that. Well, I got this. Right. Next thing you know, we're walking out of there, right?
Everyone's
That's how it was.
Yeah.
So
that's how it should be.
And that's how it should be.
Totally.
So these farmers in the mountains, they did everything.
Yeah.
They didn't just grow cannabis. They cultured their entire life. They didn't have to leave the mountain because their sustainability was the key.
For sure. And they built a quality community around what they did.
Yeah.
I think it was inclusive and exclusive at the same time.
Yeah, totally. So you had to watch your back for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, you had to watch who was coming in. Yeah, someone had to be the gatekeeper.
Yes. So you said a great quote that I stole, and I didn't hear it directly from you. I heard it from a guy named OG Steve, who's one of my good friends.
Yeah.
But when he was going to your farm to pick up some soil years ago, he said, Pat, I need to get a big discount on this stuff.
Yeah.
And you said, Steve, I really like you, but I like me more. And that is maybe one of the best quotes ever. And I've actually used that. And I think it's funny, but it's like, it's a great quote. It's a great quote.
It really is because we have to survive, So when my numbers of soil, my inputs are so expensive because I source everything at the highest level. So when it comes to that, I don't have a whole lot of margins. You don't see me living fucking, I'm like, I'm trying to take care. I'm a farmer taking care of farmers at the end of the day.
Well, and you pride yourself in quality.
Totally, with quality and consistency. Consistency is super important too.
That's just as important as quality because what does it matter?
Yeah.
If you have one good batch and one bad batch, same thing with flour, same thing with everything in the industry, whether it's seeds, soil, any sort of inputs, it's all about consistency.
It is. Right? And like, if I get a truckload of castings in, if I get whatever it is that's coming in, I test everything before I make a mix design. You understand testing.
Yeah.
You know how costly I spend just in labs. It's
incredible.
Everything
costs a lot of money. And more every year.
Yeah.
So the dollar's worth less. All this stuff costs us more. And who suffers is, the industry as a whole, unfortunately.
If you ain't got passion, you ain't got purpose, there's just not a seat at this table left anymore for you.
Right.
Because if you're here for money, I teach branding and marketing all the time. And the biggest thing I teach is you brand yourself and you build yourself now. Yeah. And everybody's worried about getting paid to build the brand. How am I going to make money? Soil King was built a decade before I made any money.
Yeah.
Right. And money didn't start rolling in. I put $1 million into the brand in order to be where I'm at today. And that's just facts, you know? So, and the other part of marketing and branding I really like to hammer home and educate is brand yourself.
Yeah.
Right. The problem out here is we have all these like corporate companies and different companies, you know, and they have all these influencers that work for them and they're just marketing the brand they work for. And then they realize they don't have a job and the brand never gave a fuck about them in the first place.
Right.
So even if you're going to brand your corporate, get a brand for yourself and collab, man, build yourself on that. So when that one falls off, you're still elevated.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Branding is so huge. And I think a lot of people see people that they look up to in the industry and all they see is the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the struggles that you went through going to prison. Typically, you know, they see the Soil King as somebody, they see James Loud as this guy who's doing this podcast and all this other stuff. But I mean, I've been doing this since 91. I've been smoking weed since 91, growing since the mid 90s. And I'm here because of all the steps that got me here. It's so many things and working on the shoulders of giants, you know, rest in peace, Sam Skunkman passed away recently. You know, guys like Sam who really had impact on all the breeders out there, whether you know it or not. Sam had big influence and big impact on the genetics. And, you know, it's like we're all working on the shoulders of so many giants that came before us. The guys that went to prison, you know, it's legal to a degree right now. It's not federally legal yet, but cannabis has been going in the direction of legality because there were outlaws, right? Yeah. I'm not saying criminals, we're saying outlaws,
no, totally,
right? And I think they're two different things.
And we're outlaws to pioneers.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I coined that too. And I just love it because I'm a pioneer. You're talking about being in the industry since beginning of the 90s, right? Yeah. You're pioneered, right? You pioneered this to where it's at today, even though you grabbed the belt loop of somebody else that brought you in it. And this is how this thing works. The baton has been passed to me. It's been passed to you. And now we're coming up to this new generation where we used to go to, you know, you can go to 10 years in federal prison for a couple seeds. Like that's where it was
literally I have friends that went to jail for seeds, or for clones and went to prison for seeds. Yeah. You know, and it's like in Texas going to prison for seeds, you know, and there's seeds, right? And it's real. And now they're federally legal, considered hemp by the Farm Bill. So you can ship seeds to any state, anywhere. They can be used for food. They can be used for whatever, but they're federally legal. So it's a different world.
I was at organic conference speaking engagement outside of Boston. And I was sitting at a table. I don't need to say names, but it was in agriculture. And you know, this one guy who's, you know, I don't really rub the right way, whatever. It's good. I'm not knocking anything, but he's complaining about how these fucking cannabis people can charge $10 a seed is out of my fucking mind. I got, you know, bags and buckets and seeds, and he's talking about, you know, tomato seeds, watermelon seeds, and he's bitching and complaining. I said, motherfucker, you don't go to prison for a watermelon seed.
Yeah.
That $10 can give you 10 fucking years. Like if you don't think that seed is worth $10 where these breeders have really come from, you're crazy, man. Yeah. They gave everything for this culture and moment. Yeah. $10, 10 years. Like, come on, that's the reality. And that's why it's elevated. Now there's seeds everywhere. Right. And so, but it's, you know, that's our culture and where it comes from. We have to remind people that, man, $10 ain't shit. Do 10 years over $10.
Yeah. And I mean, clones, $5,000, but what can it make you? Right. Is that if you're spending $10 on a seed, it has the potential. It's still a lottery, right? With seeds, it's a lottery, but $10 a seed is not even that much money. If you think of what happens if you get lucky and you find that next winner, right? So
I remember the purple Tangy pack.
Oh yeah.
I was there during all that.
Oh yeah. Great. Steve found it. I mean, that changed his life. He is the purple Tangy man.
Yeah.
Right. And he found the seed. Right. So like along with a couple other guys, but
and then they cultivated it and saved it. Like that's even the next level of, oh my God, how did that happen? Yeah. Like you just didn't grow it out.
Good old OG Steve.
Pack of Tangy. He got like 3 or 4 packs of Tangy seeds. Yeah. And one came out as the purple Tangy.
Just one randomly came out. And now DNA has since found other ones. They have their blood orange and Crockett and DNA have their blood orange. Yeah. But that purple Tangy was something special back then too.
Yeah. And tells you the one-off. So, you know, we always talk about F1s are going all the way down to stabilizing the genetics. But, I always say, and I get a lot of flack on this, but for me, it's super important that breeders, it's like, I don't walk onto a construction site, never wearing a tool bag or be an electrician and call myself a journeyman electrician.
Yeah.
Right. So this entitlement of a lot of our industry now is, you started messing with some pollen, throwing on a plant. Now you're a breeder. You're actually taking that name away from people who gave their life, went to prison, who built this whole industry. Right.
I prefer the term seed producer. Like you're
producing
seeds. That's truth.
Yeah.
You're breeding. Are you breeding to stabilize stuff, or are you just making seeds? And there's nothing wrong with either one,
at all.
But I think breeder is used very frequently, and who am I to judge on some level? But at the same time, I feel like a good term if you want to call yourself somebody who's making seeds, unless you're actually doing the work, because the breeding actually isn't making the seeds. That's the seed production. Breeding is actually doing selections. Picking those selections and crossing them back is how I look at it.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of guys are like big into calling themselves breeders, and all they do is take this plus this, and they make this, and they're the next big breeder, and that's okay. I try not to judge. I try not to get over. I'm getting older right now, so I don't get upset over shit that doesn't, really directly affect me.
I'm not knocking that either. The purple tansy was a one-off.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we need the people that are placing pollen, we'll call it. And doing different things. And it's cool to do that. But there's a separation of guys that, I don't call myself a breeder. And I have M80, M1000, Mama's Cheese, 21, Mama's Boy. Like I've won, and I don't call myself, and I used to pop 1,100 seeds of one variety at a time. I end up with, 4, maybe 6 females and 2 good structures of a male. And then I'd start trying to learn how to stabilize it. I don't call myself a breeder. Right.
Well, and I think in the Emerald Triangle, especially, and other places too, but in the Emerald Triangle in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, maybe even going into the 2000s, a lot of people got their next crop from the seeds they made that year. Yeah, and so they were really breeding, right?
Yeah.
They didn't call themselves breeders a lot, but they did make seeds.
Yeah. We all did that. Yeah.
That is what got us to where we are today, right? A lot of that work we've piggybacked, and we have all these new modern day cultivars, but a lot of the work was done previously, and now we're just seeing the expressions today of all this stuff. And very minimal work has gone in to get it to the point where it's at now compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the cannabis was really good back then. And I think people don't understand when you tell them it was good, even the stuff in the early 90s, like we saw amazing stuff. And amazing outdoor. And there was more amazing outdoor then than there is now on average.
Yeah.
So many more people are going indoors. But and I like a good outdoor. I like a really good outdoor. I love it. I like good indoor too. Don't get me wrong. But yeah,
I do too.
That really sticky where you take a bud and you stick it to the side of a piece of glass, whatever, side of the bong.
Yeah.
That's special.
I mean, there's something to be said, man. I like my oranges kissed by the sun. I like my cannabis kissed by the sun. Yeah. Even my depths were retractable, clear and black, right? Because I wanted that during the day kissed by the sun, right? Because clear plastic's a UV blocker.
Right.
So that ultraviolet rays doesn't ever touch it with a UV. And the reason why they add that, otherwise that plastic would, shred up in a year.
Yeah.
It lasts 5 or 6 years.
Well, it changes the spectrum. For sure. I mean, it's just like cocoa versus soil. You get different, you can get a different effect, different flavor profile. Yeah. And it's funny because they're doing all these studies on flavors and flavorants and flavonoids.
Yeah.
And, I was just reading how flavonoids actually change the color. It's not related to the flavor in that sense. But yeah, the color of the plant has more to do with the flavonoids than flavor.
I'm excited. I do a KC Cannafest on 420, 418, and 19 in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm hosting and emceeing that. I got Soil King Legends, the Legacy panel. I'm taking Swami and Nikki out there.
Awesome.
And Swami's one of his panels is flavonoids, right? And so he's really educated me on some things in the last, I'd say, year and a half on that. And it's just so awesome to watch our culture be educated and understand and taking next leaps, in levels. Cause it just keeps, as soon as we think.
Well, we were talking terpenes.
Yeah.
And then abstract tech comes out with these white papers that are like, well, hey, let's look at flavorants.
Yeah.
That a lot of the sulfur-based compounds that have to do with smell.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're in a different conversation. We were talking about thiols before a little bit, but they're really hard to measure. Now all of a sudden we're able to measure these things, and
crazy.
And it's amazing. Right when we think we have it all figured out, like with HPS lights, all of a sudden LED lights come out, and they suck in the beginning, but then they're better, right? And now they're the industry standard.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, we live in an amazing time. I mean, we're just still scratching the surface of so many things that are going to be stabilized in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and on the living soil and the soil and manipulating minerals, right? And so I do this is really fascinating shit. I do a microgreen mix, and I work with a couple microgreen producers that produce, organic to grocery stores. But out in Texas, I work with one out there, 0 Point Organics, and we're manipulating with minerals on flavors to 5-star restaurants. It's insane. The process, you really don't realize that you can take,
so something that's only alive for so long, and you can change the flavor with minerals. Because for you guys that don't understand, like with microgreens, if you're doing microgreens or sprouts, basically what you're doing is you're putting them in a flat, like the ones you guys root your clones in, and you're basically taking whatever substrate you use, and you're putting the seeds in there. You water them 7 to 10 to 14 days later. You're cutting, sometimes a little bit longer for certain things, and sometimes a little shorter for others. But you can manipulate the flavor, sounds like to a big degree.
Yeah. And we have 5-star chefs coming in, and they're saying, "Hey, can you turn this up a little bit? Can you get this radish a little hotter at the end and not so hot in the front?" And these are things you don't really, are just like next level stuff to me in the last couple of years that are super exciting, that play a part in all cultivation.
Yeah.
Right. It plays a part in all cultivation. So at the end, can you manipulate the flavor of a terpene profile? Can you really? Yes. The answer is yes. We're just getting to that point.
I mean, they have special broccoli for people that have cancer, the broccoli sprouts, right? And so there's a special seed that they've discovered that actually has higher concentrations. I can't remember the chemical compound. We'll show it on the screen. But yeah, it's really impressive. I think everybody that grows cannabis should be growing sprouts too, because I think any sort of sprouts, microgreens, they're super healthy. They're super good for you. They taste amazing. You can put them on pretty much everything.
Yeah, I got them in my truck right now.
Nice.
So I got yellow pea sprouts, right? 'Cause I eat those all the time. But the other part was fascinating learning is the nutrients, the density of nutrients in a microgreen, let's say a broccoli, versus you eating a seed sprout versus a head.
Yeah.
You're getting the same benefits from that seed sprout as you are the entire head of the broccoli.
Totally.
And another thing I just learned is it isn't the nutrients that grows in the broccoli. It's the stored nutrients that's in the seed to get it to life and to get it out and doing that. There's a whole, it's so,
and that's
so
why
much
it's so
cool.
concentrated.
That's why it's so concentrated. Yeah. And that's why you got to take care of your seeds, all seeds, right? Like when you're growing them, you're popping them.
That's why it's so important to grow organic.
Yeah.
What I mean? I think that growing organic with organic inputs for seed production, and there's arguments to be said for all of it. Some people think seed production should be done outside. I prefer doing it inside so I can control all the variables.
Yeah.
Prevent cross-contamination from other pollen.
I mean, you're at that level right now, just walking through here. It's like, it's crazy with production with seeds with me. I cracked everything outside under greenhouses, right? I had a 32-foot wide by 120-foot greenhouse with high ceilings, and I grew everything out and pheno hunted, jacked them off. That's how I pheno hunted and got everything down. And I was just clipping them out. And at the end, I had, 200 teenagers that I've sourced all the way down to, and they're full grown in plants, getting ready to start flipping.
So you were just taking the best, dusting a little pollen on the ones that you thought would be the best, and then out of
that, then I would take those. I'd find the structure of the males that I wanted.
Yeah.
And then I'd take the females that I really liked. And the expression outdoors is totally different than indoors of a plant. The early morning versus midday versus evening. So all those play a part in sourcing and the best cultivars that you wanted. So that's what I would do. And then I'd go into the breeding project after that. Now I had the structure. Now I had the females, and then I'd start doing my flavors. And that's kind of all where, M80 and my M1000s and things, or trying to pull. I remember pulling Thai out of AK-47. That was a cool project, right?
Nice.
Really getting that. And before that was even before, I wish I still had that, because I bet that would be really good ice water hash producer.
Probably really, really, really good. Yeah. Shout out to Simon from Serious Seeds for doing the work on the AK-47.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Simon as well. He's done amazing work, and really went back to how breeding should be done with isolating stuff, creating F1s, and hybridizing those and creating all his varieties. You know, it's like that guy bred stuff.
That's a breeder. That's what I'm saying. When a guy calls himself a breeder, even me, because I've done it, but I'm not that level. I'm still I would say, what do you call a journeyman plumber? I'm on my way up there. You know, whatever, novice or amber, whatever it is. But, you know, but you look at him and
guys like Sam, guys like Simon,
exactly.
For sure.
Those guys deserve that title. So whatever that is, that plaque goes with work. It goes with dedication.
Simon made 5 different things in 5 years originally. You know, it's like with the Cali Mist, the AK-47. I'm missing the other good ones, but there's you know, so he basically 5 strains, 5 years, really impressive. Took and put in the effort and took the time to do it correctly. And, you know, I think made huge impacts on the world we live in today. Guys like me, I mean, I make a lot of outcrosses. So we do 300 plus outcrosses a year. Yeah. You know, and then besides that with the autoflower varieties, and we're doing inbreeding with those, and there's so much work that goes on, but it's like
so beyond me these days. It's like the skills are so deep. It's so beyond me. It can go
as deep as you want. And then you start involving testing, you know, and then it just starts getting expensive.
It starts cutting up. Yeah, the AK was, so my M80 is GDP times AK, right?
Wow.
And so, and when I popped out, it was the most beautiful purple, yellow, and orange haired, you know, and then I started working on stabilization. I didn't have anybody teaching me this shit. You know, I'm just hearing things back then.
Totally.
And then Mendo Perp was AK times AK was my M1000. And it was these black hand grenade. I mean, they were just hand grenade, right? Black with yellow and orange hairs popping out of it.
Yeah, Mendo was wild back in the 90s. I remember going to pick up some Mendo Perps with my buddy Steve, and I was driving, and we had to go to a parking lot. And this is before cell phones, too. So we had pagers. I believe we had pagers back then. But basically, we had to go to this parking lot, and the guy would shine a light, and we had to get out of the car, walk towards the light. He'd come behind us, and then we'd do the exchange or whatever. And this is like, you know, 94, 93, something like that. And Mendo Perps, what was Mendo Perps?
You know what? I don't have a fucking clue. I still ask that question today. So it's like there's been I think almost, I don't know. And there's answers out there. I just don't know. What I do know is
I have not gotten a good answer from anybody.
I can't give you that answer.
And the funny thing is it's not GDP. It's not Blackberry Kush. It's not any of these. It's not, so there was the Purple Kush. It's not Purple Kush. It's its own thing, right? But there was also several probably different iterations.
That's what I'm saying. There was a lot of people called Mendo Perp. So there was a lot of varietals of Mendo Perp. So I don't even know originally, you know, where my Mendo Perp came from. I just know that it had great bag appeal and was awesome. And
it was expensive too. You know, like back in the 90s, it was still top dollar. Yeah. That was when outdoor was more expensive than indoor at certain times of the year.
Yeah, totally. So,
yeah, good stuff.
Now we were just reminiscing not long ago about price points and, you know, USVI sending a few pounds at a time, $7,500. Like that was hitting up there. And I remember, it was in the almost mid 2000s, early 2000s getting, you know, I remember when it would drop to like $3,800 a pound for indoor and it was perp. Everything was perp back then. And I was like, I'll never fucking do this again. I realized how wealthy I was, you know, because back then I was young, dumb, burning through so much cash. Right, the shoe boxes of Benjamins would like come and go constantly. It was like we never went without.
Well, and I think when you're at a young age and you get money so quickly, you don't understand the value of a dollar. I was kind of in the same boat.
Yeah,
and you don't appreciate what you have, and it only takes one time losing it to start appreciating it. You know, I think that then, you know, you lose it a couple times. I've lost my money several times. I've made good money and then lost it all. Those are all good learning experiences. I understand the value of a dollar now, but I'm also 47, right? Yeah. So it would have been much nicer had I been, you know, 20 and put a lot more away. But you know, these things, it's like, it's life, and that's what life's all about. And I mean, it's been a beautiful journey.
Shit comes and goes, man.
Long, strange trip, to say the least.
Yeah, totally.
So let's talk about Soil King and where that started, how you evolved from growing everything into starting a soil business.
It was 08 housing turn, when that crashed, I was builder developer. Again, I've been a millionaire multiple times in my life, and I've lost it, right? And the '08 downturn, it was grow food, grow weed. And then as soon as that started happening, I was like, I think John Jennings, a good friend of mine, he says he coined me the soil king. Right. I don't remember when that was 2007, I think, or something like that is when it was Soil King, 2006, 7. And I was really passionate. I started I started a mix line called Marley Mix.
Nice.
I had Marley Moonshine, Marley Shroom Bloom. And I was, it was a good mix. And I was sourcing everything through municipality green waste, the dump sites. Right. And that was before I really had an understanding of, glyphosates, pesticides, herbicides, all this all this shit that was just so toxic. And when I started unraveling that onion, I immediately just said, my God, this is my calling. This is where I need to do. And I was back then, I got rid of those lines, and I'm like, I gotta scrap all this and start over. And so I started designing Big Rootz Soil, being, super tested. I tested back then for GMO, right? It was like crazy, the testing I did pre-Prop 64 and pre-everybody. And to the point where I got hated by a lot of people in the Emerald Triangle because I owned a garden center. This is kind of a pet peeve in the industry through the 215 movement, where we all got rich on, we can grow up to 99 plants. And so I had 7 patches in 99. That was like the limit, with everybody's scripts all over, and
right.
I'm living in the mountains and I'm doing all this, but I was growing fully organic, and I had conscious cultivating, and I wasn't using Avid. I mean, everybody was using all this stuff, and I had a garden center where people coming in mad because they can't buy this shit from me, Avid. And so in the 215 movement, it's a medical movement, right? We're growing medicinal plants, and people are putting things that are carcinogenic, that are killing you in the name of medicine, on the plant to take down the bug pressure.
Right.
It was insane how much people were putting of this shit. When you got to put a whole suit on and you're spraying your plants and you're smoking it, I mean, logic and common sense says you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Right. It really is. And so the 215 movement was about making money in the name of medicine and killing people in the name of medicine instead. So that was kind of, for me, I was coming through that era, and I was preaching this, you guys are fucking stupid for this. This is what you're doing. And I was getting hated
because it was just plain ignorance. But it's like how smoking was so accepted in the 40s and 50s and 60s, smoking cigarettes, smoking on airplanes, smoking indoors, all that shit, and how bad it was. It's very comparable to all the Avid Eagle 20, all that shit that they used to use, the trifectas that they used to combine to spray on their plants. They were basically poisoning people, not knowing it. With most of the people actually had good intentions. They didn't understand that they were poisoning their customers.
Yeah, I mean, when they found a guy like me, they realized it real quick, because I was calling them out, and that was kind of the downfall. Was I was testing. Yeah, that's when testing was coming online. SC Labs, I was trying to get. We had, what was the names out of Steep Hill Labs, right? Back then.
And then before there was the Steep Hill, and
there was, what's her name, in Santa Rosa. Her and her husband had a lab. Anyways,
yeah.
I'm testing for this stuff. I'm at the Emerald Cup. I'm producing product. We're squishing it. We're squishing flour back then, kind of where we started, right?
Yeah.
Trying to went from sift to ice water hash, and trying to figure out squishing flour and
concentrating pesticides. I think.
Yeah, that was it. It's concentrating pesticides. So when I was I was at the Emerald Cup, and I was showing testing of no pesticide levels, and I'm trying to get into this, and really no lab was really accurate, but I'm talking a lot about this. And I had a lot of people that were angry because they said I was trying to one up the industry by saying this, my shit's better because of this. And there was a lot of knowledge that just kind of rejected that look, because we were making fucking money. We were making money. It was like we were getting paid money per unit, and we're growing fucking units,
right,
crashing it. But in order to get to the finish line, it's easy to suit up and, and throw some pesticide.
Oh, so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So many people
ship it out.
No, and so early on, my mentor and someone who I really believed in was my aunt, and she's been preaching organic since 91, since I first started smoking, and she always talked about organics, I'm sure from back in the 70s, even talking about organics and growing your own and doing it right and staying away from all the dumb shit. So yeah,
and there was a lot of people like that were out there that did. I mean, Emerald Triangle was full of generational family farms that are no longer in existence, but it was like the organic, they didn't go to the grocery. They didn't go to the hydro store or the garden centers for stuff, man. If they needed something, they made it right there. Sustainability,
composting,
all of it came off the farm, and it was a difference. So organics was always there, and I could tap into the Swamis and Nickies of the world, right? I can get into that, but there's just so much money being made, of in that. So I don't know, not to keep going down that line. Then we transitioned into the Prop 64, when I was the first, Seed to Soul up in Cloverdale, California was the first micro license, if not the very first, which I'm pretty sure it is. It's like the top one or two that was given in the state of California when licensing happened. And I prepared my city for Prop 64 to be accepted. So we were the first city in the state of California when Prop 64 was approved to allow licensing to move forward. And that process to me was huge because I had to, years prior, I had to educate my community and educate the council. There was a 4 out of 5 no vote forever. Didn't want anything to do with it. And I kept showing up at the podium. A few people in Cloverdale would come in, Dorian would support it. And going back from before to get the city, ready to it, everybody said no. The city council said, well, this isn't going to work. And the city manager came to me and said, look, here's the deal. If you think you can get your constituents in the city to approve legalization of cannabis, we can have your back, but we don't believe that's where it is. And I said, good, I'll put Proposition P on the ballot. And that was 2016. I put Proposition P on the ballot. We got over half of our city that approved cannabis and wanted it. I walked in and said, well, we're moving forward on this now. You're putting money where your mouth is, right? And we did that. And so the city was completely in and prepared. And just take one step before that was building bridges with law enforcement. Chief of police of Cloverdale, California, he died from cancer, 8 rounds of cancer from the walkie-talkie on his neck. Right. So he came to me. I got arrested. It was like 2014. I got arrested for cannabis again. And I had the garden center open, and I'm on the Boys and Girls Club. I'm on the board of directors. I'm a longtime Lions Club member. I'm a coach in Little League, softball, and doing all that. And I'm building houses in the community. And here I am, this cannabis guy getting arrested for cannabis that has a garden center. Like nothing really made sense. So he came to me and said, I remember he came to me and said, look, man, why are you so passionate about this? I said, because this is going to save lives. This is my passion and my purpose, and I'll never give up on the plant, not just cannabis, but all across the board. Yeah. I will put everything. At that time I had, my kids were coming home crying, saying that my dad's going to, be in prison the rest of his life, and he's hearing this from teachers and things at school. I had the DARE program telling my daughter raised her hand in the DARE program and said, my mom has struggled with opiate addiction, and cannabis has helped her with that. And I witnessed it, and he laughed her, told her to sit down and never say anything like that again. She didn't know what she was talking about. And so I actually would go in and sit into the DARE programs, right? I would be educating officers on what cannabis actually is back then. So all this stuff happened. And when the chief of police came over, he goes, why are you willing to give up everything? Like you got money, you built you built a subdivision here. Like your high standards are up, but then you're cutting yourself off. And I told him, man, I'll never give up on this. This is my one thing in life that I will follow through to the end. Yeah. And he stepped up from the table. We're sitting across just like this. He stepped up, put his hands out, and he says, how can I assist you? Right. And at that moment, that's bridge building 101 that came in. And I said, first off, we need to quit you forcing people to grow weed indoors with numbers and forcing them. You are having kids, doors kicked in, and kids taken away from the family over this plant. And even more so, all the electrical fires, because in Cloverdale at that time, it was 1 in 7 houses that were growing indoors. Those are huge numbers, right? Yeah. And I said, not one of these people that you go in and kick their doors in has good electrical. Like you guys are forcing neighborhoods to get burnt down.
Yeah.
Right? You can't call a licensed, electrician because he's going to rat you out. So now you got all these ballasts and all these wiring and all this shit in the houses. And it's time to you guys are the problem, not us. Fuck your plant count. Let's get growing outdoor in the backyard. And let's talk about pesticides and contaminants. And him and I wrote the ordinance, and it was the first ordinance written in the world that said in cannabis cultivation, there's no pesticides or herbicide use within the city limits of Cloverdale. And we put that language in there. And what happened is now we ended up allowing 6 plants to grow outdoors.
Yeah.
So now people were growing outdoors. The complaints of the neighbors where he got it. He says, oh, well, we can deal with complaints over the neighbors or faulty fucking wiring in a house that's going to burn it down. It was a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Like logic, like throw logic out there. And he goes, would you help me try to figure this out? So next thing you know, him and I are friends, and his officers are hating me because of it.
Oh, I bet.
Right? They fucking hated me. So all of a sudden I have the garden center in Cloverdale. I'm telling everybody, call me up if you're getting raided. We're going to figure this shit out. So these officers are kicking indoors still, and their chief's not allowing it, right? And it's a mess. And I'm getting phone calls, and I'm running over there, and I'm calling the chief of police, and I'm saying, man, this is fucking bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so they would take pictures of Avid or whatever, and they'd send me pictures, because there's no use of it in Cloverdale, California. And then I would go over to the house and I'd educate on the house instead of arresting them for things. So it was a whole educational thing. This is pre-Prop 64. So, it's crazy. It was crazy times to the point with the same chief of police, I gave him cannabis and made RSO on the side because I was treating his cancer, but nobody could know about it because he would lose his pension, and he knew he was probably going to die and his family would lose all that.
Right.
So we kept that on the under. And then I remember through one time when we were getting all licenses right before Prop 64 was approved, Beazle Dorian was getting raided, and all the cops were up there raiding him. And I called up the chief of police, and I said, man, this just ain't going to go. You got to call these guys off. And he actually radioed in and saved Dorian from getting raided that time.
Wild.
Right. So, I mean, you look at this outlaw, for me being a convict to an outlaw to pioneering and having to build bridges with people I never trusted who always were against me. That's big shit, man. It's like, those are proud moments of my life to get this industry from where it was to where it is. And I played a small part, but I did that part.
But it's all small parts.
Yeah, it's all small parts.
All of this is all small parts. It's all of us doing our part, right? I feel like these passionate people out there that are very devotional to the plant, it's all part of the bigger picture, and it's all part of moving the plant forward. And, I think we're just stewards of the plant in regards, like, we don't own this shit. We're just moving the plant forward. We're just trying to advance the plant to where it should be.
And where it will be.
And which is pretty amazing. It's like we saw, 215 for people that weren't there. 96, that was the first kind of vision where it's like, in California, this is going to be legal someday.
Right? It was Dennis Perone, man, hammered that one down.
Yep.
Like crazy times back then. It was the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco, and they had the club. What was it called? Where the pot shop was. They got people like Jerry Mum from Mendo Seeds, and all of them were producers of that. So they produced cannabis for the 215. And they had a house that Dennis Perone used to sell weed out of in San Francisco over off of the Tenderloin. Not the Tenderloin, but I forget, Polk Street or whatever it was. And that was where the 215 movement really came. And it saved people's, cannabis, cancer, cannabis, AIDS, all that plays a super part. My mother passed away from cancer. I carried her out of this world. That's where, I don't know if you remember, Mama's Boy 20-1 came in. She didn't really want to smoke cannabis. So I came up and I started working with a few people. Lawrence Ringo was one of them, got some of his cuts, and started working with some people on really good CBD lines back then. And I came up with Mama's Boy. Mama's Boy was actually a squisher that didn't turn to oil. You can actually wash it and get consistency of of rosin. It was crazy back then. And it ranged at 20-1. And so that was, my mom smoked that. We made tinctures. We did all that. And she didn't take her chemo or anything, but she lessened herself on the pharmaceutical drugs, and I was able to carry her out of this world. So it works so well hand in hand with these things. You don't need to die out on pharmaceuticals. I mean, cannabis fucking really saves lives and makes end of death a lot easier.
And it makes the world a better place. It's hard to argue that, it's like there's still people that are trying to hold on to whatever they heard from back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. The war on drugs.
Yeah.
It makes the world a better place. And if you look into it and you actually look into it, even Sanjay Gupta talking about these kids that have, seizures, like really bad seizures, and how this plant can take away those seizures. How can you argue with that? You can't.
You can't.
Or you're a fucked up person.
Yeah.
Right? Or you're a bad person. You might just be a bad person if you don't agree that a parent should be allowed to give their kid a drug that takes away their seizures that has very minimal side effects.
Totally, man. Like that's where, right? Speaking of Lawrence Ringo, that's where the Stanley Brothers came in with Charlotte's Web, and Charlotte's Web was actually produced by Lawrence Ringo. Did you know that? You probably know that whole story and that stuff that came down.
I have a good friend. My friend Eric was involved with that mess, and
And at the end of the day, we all were upset. And Lawrence, before he passed away, said, "If it saves a fucking child, who gives a fuck?"
Yeah.
Saves one child. Do you think I care about me being attached to any of that? No.
And how can you argue that?
You can't argue it. It was a life lessons from an elder to me that I'm able to process and think about as I'm getting older in my time and apply that, responsibility of a mindset to things that come up in my life. Like that's powerful.
Yeah.
Like, he's like Charlotte's Web, Lawrence Ringo.
Yeah.
Right? Who gives a fuck? Did it save her? Did it help her? Gives a fuck. Yeah, exactly. That's special right there, Well, that's a lesson to be learned.
And now we've got Germany going legal. They're not even going legal. They are a recreational country. They're the biggest recreational country. But I see other countries ready to follow suit. Obviously there's Canada, there's Portugal, there's South Africa, and some of those are medical, some of them are recreational. But Canada, big one as well. And we're still not recreational on a federal level here. That will change.
Yeah.
Hopefully within the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 4.
We say that every 3 or 4
years. I know. Every time we have a new president, it's like, next 4 years we'll have it. I would hope that within the next 4 years they have it figured out, or at the very least there's interstate commerce allowed, right? And
has to be interstate commerce allowed. It has to be. And the commodity of agriculture versus the commodity of cannabis, that system doesn't work. Look at California, right? Like I'm invested in here. I've lost millions. I'm still standing. And the only success story out of here is the state of California.
Yeah.
Like really, that's the only success story. They put us all out of business. Was it purposely driven? Absolutely. Were we ripped off for our votes? 100%. Are we still being manipulated for votes? And yeah, absolutely. Like we
overtaxed.
Hey, come on, man. Like it's ridiculous. Why? There's no reason that we shouldn't be selling weed at farmers markets.
Oh, I know. That's really the silliest thing ever. Yeah. Right. That we can't, or that you can't go to the farm and buy directly from the farmer.
No sense.
It makes zero sense. Except for from a taxation standpoint.
Yeah,
if you're like, well, we need to
tax
3 times before it gets to the consumer. I get it. That's what they want to do, but that's not right.
When I was paying more in taxes for a pound of weed than I could sell a pound of weed for a few years ago in my facility, I knew that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right. When the cog just didn't work. And in cannabis, we've come to a point in business, in any other business mentality, 10 cents, ROI or 10% ROI, you can run a business on projections of 10%. Nobody in their right mind would say, oh, that's a business I want to get into.
Right.
Right. In cannabis, we're seeing that 10% and we say, we can make this work. We're going to work harder, team. Right.
That's why the restaurant industry and the cannabis industry do so well together. The people in them, both of them. Yeah. 10%. I think the restaurants is like 5 to 7% right now.
Yeah.
Right. But California did pull the cultivation tax in June.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think there's things we're doing. We're stepping in the right direction in a lot of ways, but there's also things we need to fix, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that they're allowing cannabis cafes. I think that's amazing. I think we need cannabis
We're
cafes.
just not allowing them quick enough.
No.
The process of it, the bureaucrats going through the city approval process, and and then you have to wait for us.
Too much red tape for everything.
Sad. Yeah, it's just too much.
But that's why you moved out of state.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I came here and I had the garden center through COVID up in Cloverdale. And what is that when you're a grocery store, you can allow to be open because you're providing there's a word for that type of business. And
like a co-op.
No, it was like because it's essential business,
essential business. Yeah.
Essential business. Right. So
we were essential during
I was
COVID.
completely essential because I'm teaching people how to grow food in their backyard,
right.
And I'm teaching people how to grow cannabis, and I'm producing all that. I'm selling veggie starts. I'm doing all of it. And the city comes in to me and says, look, you're going to have to shut your store down. You're not an essential business. Right. And I'm like, hey, get the fuck out. Yeah. Like, just shut the fuck up and leave. So they came back, had the cops come in there too. Same thing. I went out, threw a fit in the parking lot, get the fuck out of here. I refused to put on a mask. Not that I'm that guy, but I refused to be told what I was going to have to do. And I was the essential tool in our area. And I was growing vegetables, shit tons of vegetables and giving it away to people. Like that is where the move needed to be. And so, that was one of the factors going through that. Was one of the reasons I feel like I didn't want to do business in California because California didn't have my back. The EPA being a compost producer and things, it was just so much regulation and taxation on me at every angle. And here I'm trying to be an honest business where people are dropping $50,000 in a paper sack for soil, and I'm putting it in the bank and I'm paying taxes on it, and I'm trying to build this business and be that person. And California and city they just didn't want to be a good partner. And so I needed to exit this. Plus we had the downturn and we had the fallout of cannabis. In 2021, my projection in 2021, when we started, the downturn of cannabis started happening in 22, I made $5.5 million, almost $6 million in soil sales. In my projections, so I had to buy inputs, and I'm building up for the next projection of 2022 at 8 million, right? I made $80,000 in sales, and my projection was 8 million. So immediately, it was turning the switch off. So, you remember I had the houseboats on Lake Sonoma, ski boats, all the shit I had, and buildings and houses and, lake houses and all that stuff.
And you're
went
not the only
bye-bye.
one. You're not the only one. So many of our friends, so many people that we know basically scaled up cultivation facilities, bought new locations, bought buildings outright because COVID was so good for the industry and we thought it was never going to end, a lot of us. And then we got cut off at the knees.
And I did that with Seed to Soil. All my money I made, I built out, I built out a cannabis facility. I had my nursery set up in there. We were the first facility pumping rosin into the legal market in the state of California. Can Remediate, I started in there, and I was putting all my money in building up cannabis at the same time. I was diversified when the collapse happened, and it hit me at every angle. It really did, man. Yeah. It just crushed me at every angle. And, so Arizona wasn't so, it was getting out of California is needed for my mental health for sure. At that time, I went through, in 22, I went through a suicide attempt, and, I lost everything, and I had to go. I had bankrupt my business up in Northern California on that one, and it was really hard to. There was no roadmaps. There's no anything on how to get through this type of industry, right? You could search YouTube for how do you get through. What do you I'm talking to attorneys. Every attorney wants $5,000, and they all have a different objective of how I'm going to get through something, and they're all full of shit, man. Right. And so that's kind of where, Arizona went out there, and I'm like, I started the podcast, my podcast, Built for This, and it was named Soil King Legends of Legacy, where I was doing discussion panels all over the country of, Legends of Legacy panels of Soil King, where I'd have influencers out. And then I was going to start the podcast called Soil King Legends and Legacy. And my mentor, Dr. Greg Reed, he said, man, he's like, this was a year and a half, a year ago or so, a little over a year ago. He goes, what's the one thing that you wanted to do that you haven't gotten off the ground yet? I'm like, man, I'm just trying to survive. He goes, give me one thing. And I'm like, well, it's a podcast. And this was a Thursday night. And he's my mentor. And he goes, good, you got till Tuesday to have your first podcast recorded. I had no studio. I had nothing.
Yeah.
And I hustled and I figured it out. And as the time I was figuring it out, I was like, well, do I want it to be the Soil King Legends Legacy podcast? I mean, our artwork is done. Everything's done. And I said, or do I really want to talk about the pain and grit of what we went through as an industry and business owners and collapse? I'm like, I'm looking at myself. I'm all built for this fucking shit, obviously. And then that's the coin, built for this podcast came up. And I started hammering on that. And, that's what the subject line is about, is really how did we get in any business for that matter, cannabis or not, there's the biggest people in the world have failed a number of times, but nobody wants to talk about how they got through those lowest points. I mean, like I said, I'm a suicide survivor. The only reason I didn't pull the fucking trigger is because I had seen a mental shot of my kids. Right. So I went through some deep, dark shit. And what happened is I was able to get the fuck out, find myself and build myself back. And today, I'm building companies back. I'm coming back from nothing. And, spiritually, fucking mentally, physically, I am the best person I've ever been in my life.
So you recently lost a bunch. I've lost weight this year, and you recently lost a bunch of weight too. I see your videos. Man. I see your boxing. You're doing some good stuff. It's hot down there too. So it's harder to keep the weight on down in Arizona, I'm sure. But yeah, how did you do it? It's partially, it's a mental thing. Like if anybody asks me, it's mental. It's also diet, but a lot of it is mental. Like you got to get over these mental hurdles.
I mean, that's what it is. So I had to restart my entire life, right? I'm getting beat up from every angle. Sam, my partner as well, was getting beat up from every angle during this time. We had each other in business back. And I had Amy in my life who was really inspiring me to show up at the gym.
She's a personal trainer?
She's a personal trainer and a coach. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so, and when I was younger, I used to box.
Yeah.
And watching... My son is, Soil King Jr. He's 6'7", and he was wrestling through high school. And so I started jumping on the mats with them and wrestling during, practice with all these kids. And I really found something, right? I liked it. So I ended up buying a gym and myself, all the stuff. And Amy and I started, working out. And then I went into the gym and all of a sudden I started feeling good about who I was becoming. And I could start my day off with, I do a gratitude list. This is how I start my day off. I do a gratitude list. And the second set is my wants, like ask God for what you want, man. It's like, this is what I want, manifesting this stuff. This is what I want. Every day I write down what my wants are. And then the third part is my give. What am I going to give? Well, I'm going to be a good person today. And I'm going to tell some, older person, I'm going to bring him into the front of the line. I'm going to do good deeds throughout the day. And I'm going to memorize that stuff. And then going to the gym and working on myself. And by the time I started working, all this building businesses back that was unreal, that could never be done. My head was telling me, you'll never fucking be the Soil King. You'll never make it out of this hole. You'll never figure this stuff out. All of a sudden I started believing in who I was. And I was accomplishing myself before I started work every day.
Yeah.
And man, that just was like infectious. And then I was jumping on a treadmill. I was doing bikes, trying to warm up. And I'm thinking, this is the dumbest shit ever. I'll never like to go to a gym and jump on a treadmill. It just makes no sense.
Can't do it.
One day I go by.
That's a struggle for me.
It's a struggle, man. So then one day I decided, I'm sitting and there's a couple bags in this big gym in Arizona nobody's ever hitting. And I walked over to it and I started hitting it. And I'm like, oh my God. This is what I needed. And so, 4 or 5 days a week, I'm doing 6 to 8 2-minute rounds with 20 minutes in between, just as warming up before I go, hit the pile and start doing some stuff. And I'm a whole different person. I fucking love myself today.
Yeah.
Don't have the money, right? Don't have the properties I used to, I am 100% the best person at 56 I've ever been in my life. I love myself more than I ever have.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going places. Right. And so all that wreckage and that empire that, I retired at 52 and the empire imploded and I never worked so hard in my life. All that stuff that happened, I trade it all right now for sitting here telling you this story about how I love myself today. Just for that. Like there's power in that, man.
There is. There's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. And then having a partner that drives you to go to the gym, we get to, I get up in the morning, we smoke some weed.
Yeah.
If I don't smoke weed before the gym, I'm thinking I'm hitting the bag, bam, bam, going at it. And I'm calibrating my day and what I got to get done.
Well, that's the beauty of cannabis. And so for me, it's more extract. I'll take dab. I'll take a dab.
Yeah.
I take a small dab before I go. Cause when I do if I do flower, I feel like I'm more winded a little bit.
Yeah.
The dab opens my lungs up. Yep. So I'll do a nice.
I do rosin pins.
Yeah.
That's
rosin
what I do. I do
great.
rosin pins in the morning.
I love the invention of rosin pens.
Me too.
I mean, regular pens, whatever, and I'm not hating on any other type of extract, but rosin pens do it for me. I love, Rosin Tech, Sam, they got a great product.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something special about rosin carts. I like the half grammars myself. If it was up to me, they'd all be half grammars. I feel like the best flavors in that first half a gram.
Yeah. They just didn't, it's too much hardware for a half a gram. In this industry, if you make a half a gram, you're selling it. They want a gram, and if you make a gram, they're asking you, "Why aren't you going back to the half a gram?"
Yeah,
it was
or I want the 2 gram. And
I'm like,
or
I want the 2 gram.
So like for me, it's like those 2 grams don't make any sense because I'm like, I want the first half of the gram, and the other gram and a half I don't want. Someone else can have the pen. So it makes zero sense. But I think for flavor, I think the first half of the gram hits better and tastes better.
Yeah, agreed. So, yeah, so that's it. And so for me, it's like when I get in that mode, I can focus on skill. I can focus on footwork, and I can look at the bag and I can get everything I possibly can out of it without worrying about work.
Flow.
Because flow. Yeah, flow. And that's with smoking the rosin pin before I get into the gym. And so I don't smoke weed throughout the day until after 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I'm smoking. Then I smoke a joint.
Yeah, I train over at UFC. CJ comes over there. We train sometimes, and Juan from Backpack Boys comes in reeking of joints. Man, he lights the whole place up with smell. Right? He's got terps on fire. Like
I wish I was with you guys out here, man.
But yeah, I'm more of an extract guy. I just feel like it's more clear. It also gives me that flow, and I'm not as winded.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it.
OCPD or whatever that is. That's all settling in. I don't really do dabs. Only way I did dabs is when we were doing we were in the facility and we're mixing flavors, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to come up and I take little hits, but I've never been a big dabber. But at the rosin pin, I got one in my, that's what I smoke all day long.
Yeah.
And not all day long, but that's my
I like
go-to.
Cool,
that
I love cool dabs.
Joints.
So I don't like the hot dabs. I'm not a big hot dab guy, but I like my nice cool dabs that have great flavor, and then it just coats your teeth, so you get that flavor for the next half hour. I love that.
Yeah, you taste that tang on the back of your throat. That's why I judge good weed in a doobie.
Yep.
Like if you ever see me smoking the second half of a joint, I found something I like. Period. I can't smoke weed that doesn't taste good. Right. And you could find that white thorn rose, or you can find those out there that Johnny has, and all of a sudden I'm down to the roach. And when it's down to the roach, I'm going back like I need more.
I love that white thorn rose. So I have a ZDP. I don't think I have any flower here today, but I'll have to get you some. It's special. It's the Skittles GDP. It's got some other stuff in it too, but it's really unique. But if you like white thorn
Skittles
rose,
GDP,
and it's candy. It's
interesting.
And the thing is all the other phenos that we popped, they didn't have it. They didn't have it. They had shitty structure. They didn't taste quite right. And this was like the perfect balance where it's GDP dominant with a little bit of Skittles. Structure's not great, but it doesn't matter because like for extract and other things, I feel like if you like white thorn rose, it's right up your alley. In fact, I'm gifting it to Johnny. I'm going up there next week to gift him cuts of it. And he's the only one that's getting it. Besides my cultivation partner here, he is the only one that's getting it in the whole world.
That's awesome.
So, it's special.
Okay, that's great. That's super exciting.
So yeah, and I like Skittles. I like GDP. I like terps, but I also like Chem Dog. I like Northern Lights. I like funky stuff. I like hazes.
So tired of hazes. Once in a while I get original haze, that's okay, but I'm hazed out.
Oh, it's coming back though.
It's coming back.
They came down from the hills in December, and man, it was coming back. And people from Europe are like, what the fuck is going on here? Like confused. Ariane from Greenhouse was like, what's going on? Like I'd never seen anything like that either, just to be honest. That there was so many hazes in one place that were very terpinolene dominant.
Yeah.
And it was wild. But I feel like we need to get away from the gelatos. There's nothing wrong with gelatos.
GMOs too, but I mean, they're good producers. In
the washing game, we need to go away from the GMO, right? And I think there's so many other things to explore. And it yields. And the yield is great. But let's go for stuff that doesn't necessarily yield, or find stuff that yields, that produces the quality that you're looking for.
And you got Brad from California Seed Bank just crushing it on the burgers, right? We did in Rosentech.
I do love Donnie Burger though. Even though it's a GMO cross, I feel like it's special.
I mean, it's built for bag appeal, and it just ended when he built that genetic line. I remember Eddie was here, and it was me, him. Eddie, we had Brett and I were the adopted, had paperwork before Eddie passed away, signed up, kind of keep his heritage and legacy alive. And so Brett, and I remember they were coming up with the burger name, and I laughed at the burger name. I thought it was the dumbest name ever that you could do. And now you look at it and it's burger this, burger that. But we were at the facility looking at returns on, in Rosentech, and it was the one that hit the highest was 7.24%. And that was a Donnie Burger. And
it's insane.
Yeah. And now Brett has his new ones. He's hitting over 9 and over 11.
Wow.
It's crazy. Just imagine that. Washing that,
as a
and now you're
over of rosin that's coming back.
Crazy,
that's a rosin return.
That's rosin return. That's not hydrocarbon. That's rosin returns, man.
Insane.
When those genetics were built, they were built for girth, yield, bag appeal, and handling outside weather.
So Donnie Burger myself, I do not like the flour. I love it when it converted. No, so the first time I saw it, I've tried the organic, but Flora and Flame had some flour they gifted me, and I was like, I don't know about this Donnie Burger. But then he gave me the rosin, and I'm like, I went to Reggae on the River this year with it. And I was sharing it with everybody, and it's really good. It's got a good flavor. It's got a good effect.
Yeah.
And effect
the weed puts you in the fucking couch. There's no doubt about it. It just lays me out. I can't keep smoking it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not one of those ones, I hit once in a while, but I mean, that isn't my daily. There's no way. Going back to the white thorn rose.
It's feel good weed.
Yeah, it's feel. I remember I brought Johnny up to the Ganjier campus for the first time, right? With bags of weed. And I had, it was like our third class coming through. Yeah. And so we put it all out there, and we did our approach on white thorn rose. It blew everybody away. It was crazy. And it was awesome to see that. But then that's where it was like, I touched in with Johnny before that, a few years on it. And I was like super impressed with it. Nice. It's just crazy, man. So it's just crazy how we evolve, and being part of the original member of the Ganjier was the way we built that thing. It's
pretty impressive. I feel like, there was Oaksterdam, and then you guys have your own thing with tasting. And Ganjier is about flavor pairings and understanding profiles.
Totally. Yeah. About really understanding the layers. Yeah. Right. Layers are super important. Like when we're talking about appellations all around the world, and wine and food and different things,
sure.
You can actually taste it when you study it and you taste it, and you really have to identify this from the smell to the dry hit to the light, to how it tingles on the back. Like I can tell when weed's grown in, if it's grown in Northern California, just because of the soil mushroom layer that comes with it, versus if it's grown somewhere else. You can these identifiers are super cool.
Like
man.
You can tell if they're seagull shit or bat shit.
Yeah. I mean, no
There's
doubt about it.
Things, especially if you're from up north, it's like you can tell the guys that use the seagull versus the backwater.
Yeah.
And
the seagull actually worked better when cultivating. Actually, when seagull came out, it was like,
this stuff's pretty cool. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I work for a company called American Culinary Chefs Best. Yeah. They work with like Yoplait and other things, and I worked on tasting panels. This was 20 years ago almost. And we would get Doritos chips or Fritos or whatever, and then compare them to all the other things that are similar to them. Yeah. And we'd have to break down the flavors, and they would try to trick us with stuff. And we did these panels, and basically they would certify products as American Culinary Chefs Best with stars that they could put like a little emblem that they got to put on like Yoplait yogurt. That was the big one that you always saw in the grocery store. But yeah, I learned a lot about taste being a chef, and it's like there's so many different layers, and it's also subjective.
Totally subjective.
It's just subjective to the individual. Yeah. You have stuff.
We're all individuals.
Yeah. And you have memories from childhood that can spawn some flavor. Rhubarb pie for me. Right? I remember rhubarb from when I was a little kid. And I love rhubarb.
Where's that strain? That's a good one we need to come up with.
I think somebody has a rhubarb, but I smelled it and it wasn't very rhubarb-like. I was like, okay, somebody was just trying to, and maybe that's the thing with phenotypes, is it could be an expression that was laid on by either the nutrition or the environment, right? So phenotypical variation can change. So when somebody grows it, because it's called rhubarb, and maybe the first time they grew it, it was very rhubarb. The next guy gets it and it's more raspberry.
Yeah, I haven't tried it. I haven't seen a rhubarb. That'd be interesting.
We need some rhubarb.
Need some rhubarb. That'd be a hit.
Green tea, rhubarb.
Sweet tea. Green tea. Yeah, green tea.
Yeah, green tea or sweet tea. I mean, I think that's the beauty of this plant is there's so many directions we can go, and you will find rhubarb. You will find green tea. You will find sweet tea. It's out there. You just need to, start looking for it.
Yeah, totally.
So, and start with the right genetics.
Yeah. Yeah. It was I'm one of the original council members for the Ganjier, and just the history and being part of that whole process of us, we had Oaksterdam, and then we were coming out with our program. And so we had Frenchie Cannoli, right? Swami, like Nick was in there. We had, there's so many, there was originally it was 12, then it went up to, I think, to 18.
Wow.
But we'd go to an Airbnb in Marin, big house, and we'd stay there. And it was the most craziest time because we'd all come together and we'd argue between, I remember Frenchie and Nicotine at the time. And, nobody can call it hash. Hash is ancient. You can't use that. You can't use ice water hash. Frenchie was throwing a fit. He was going to quit the program.
Yeah.
If you call it ice water hash, we own hash. Right? Hash is history. I'm teaching the history of cannabis. Well, I'm teaching the history of hash. You can call it sift. You can call it whatever the fuck you want, but you're not calling it hash. I remember these arguments we would have.
Right.
And and what we ended up having to do is because we all had our individual personas of ourselves, right? Of public figure status.
Sure.
And so we're all head tight and not really, we've been running and, kind of creating our own way, bulldozing our way through it. But in this whole thing, we really had to come down and really listen to one another. So once I stepped back and started really listening, I was being educated. We all did that, and we all came together, and then we built this program called the Ganjier program. And it was all that entire time we were building it. It was, whiteboards and PowerPoint presentations and video cameras and producers and everything, filmed the whole thing at one off. And it was really an exciting time in my life to be part of that. It really was, man.
Yeah. I think you guys have a special program.
Yeah, definitely.
But education is so important these days on so many levels. And there's a lot of miseducation that's available online.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know what's right, what's wrong. And, I think we learned from elders growing up. It was always elders, like somebody that taught us. And it's not available to everybody that's passionate about this plant. And so having programs like Oaksterdam and Cloverleaf and all these things for people that are interested, especially to break into learning more about if they can afford it.
Yeah.
And there is information, there's podcasts, we talk about stuff, but it's like you can really dive deep when you go into these classes.
Yeah, totally.
So.
I've been working on another project called Can Attender. I got a whole AI protocol and some cool stuff that I'm releasing. I got a couple different AI tool protocols that are out there right now. One's called the Probiotic Farmer.
Yeah.
The other one is Soil King. So it's just a whole Q&A, and it goes down to, the Probiotic Farmer was really good. We took Alan Atkinson and Tim McCormick from Culture Biologics.
Right.
Back then, he's now, Probiotic Farmer is our business we started. And so with Alan, we took all of the curriculum. If you remember the Facebook PFA.
Yeah.
So the PFA was like 13 years worth of dialogue, research books, teaming with microbes, all the literature from 30,000 members across the world that put into this thing, all the research, we were able to take all that research and upload it into our AI.
Wow.
So our AI directed it into it. And then we taught the AI not to do fallacies, to check for, for false identifiers. And now the probiotic farmer is really like, we're getting ready to, just right now, getting ready to launch that. It's going to be an app on your phone. And it talks everything, Korean natural farming, all of it that goes into it, the research. So it's super cool because, you can ask it anything and it'll give you like how to make your own bokashi. It'll give you all the research on, I dive into minerals, right? Yeah. I dive into minerals on it and how minerals can convert flavors, right? You ask it these questions and it comes up with all these different types of minerals that can take the job to where you need it to go. Like, it's a fucking tool, man.
It's amazing, some of the stuff that's coming out.
And we should do a James Loud seed one. I'm
ready.
I'll talk to you with my guy.
We got my breeding book. I'm doing a course with Oaksterdam. We're going to have a course that we're doing, a certificate course for breeding. So that should be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm down.
I'll hook you up with our guy. He's working at NASA building stuff for AI right now, but AI he can take all your book right now and he can, they put everything in your book and all the curriculum that you want in addition to what AI will find on its own and do its own research. The key with AI, you have to direct it. Meaning you don't want it to wander in areas. Like for me on the Soil King one, I'm not trying to go towards synthetic farming.
Right.
So I put blockers in there so it's not identifying that direction. It's staying on this side of the path that I believe in.
Nice.
On the organics, yeah. So we'll definitely.
Yeah. I'm open to everything.
So cool, yeah.
Yeah, so if you had one piece of advice for your younger self.
Yeah.
I don't know how much younger. Let's go like 14.
Yeah.
What would that one piece of advice be?
Man, I love myself today. And I talk about, part of my story is the 13-year-old boy within. At 13 years old, I went home and I looked in the door, looked in the windows. The house was moved out and my mom decided to move out and leave me. So I was homeless. And because of Niles Canyon and because of growing weed, I was able to support myself. I was homeless trying to get myself to Mission, Hopkins Junior High, washing my hair in a creek. And I realized just school wasn't for me. So we talk about this 13-year-old boy within. I embrace him. And it's the best part of my life. I'm built by the story. I ended up buying my first house at 19 and starting my first plumbing company at 18. And that's because I didn't go to high school, right? It's because I went straight to work and I grew weed on the side as a side hustle. And I made side hustle money going to the only reason I went to the high school was to sell doobies. Yeah. Right. And I did really good at that, So the advice for myself would be stay solid to who you are, and with who I am today, I found a power greater in myself. I choose to call God. And I would say that would be just to tap into faith over fear and anxiety, right? To go back into that, just keep driving that shit happens and your life's going to be great. Quit worrying about it.
Yeah. The one thing constant is change.
Change.
And I feel like when times are good, they're good and they're going to be bad, but they're also going to be good again.
The bad times build the great times. That's how it is, man. You'll never
appreciate the good times if you don't have the bad times. Right. Like literally, if you've never had bad times, you don't know how good it is when it's good, And,
I'm the best form of myself right here, right now, because of the bad times.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't quit.
Yeah. The bad times make you who you are. And they do, how you deal with things in those bad times defines you as a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, if people are looking to find out more about Pat King, where can they go?
I mean, you just Google the Soil King.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that I'm doing, I'm building out licenses in New York. I teach, regenerative agriculture on agriculture scale, food scale, as well as cannabis. And, I have some of the best farmers that consult for some of the best cannabis farms all across the country here on living soil, indoor greenhouse and outdoor. And we're just crushing it at every level of success. I'm known as the sourcing guy that I check. I've always been the one that sourced clean products. So I test for heavy metals. When I build soils or inputs or fertilizers, biologics, everything I do, I pre-source before I build. And I'm part of a successful tool in the licensed market now. There's a lot of failures. The hardest thing in this industry is watching a lot of money go into converting into living soil
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, they fail for heavy metal. They fail for something. And that is just because they trust the wrong partners, right? And to get to there. With my cultivators and my farmers, they aren't experiencing that. We're going 3 years in license without any fails,
Yeah.
and it's super important to be part of that team. And the hardest thing is to watch that same farm that goes to living and fails convert back to synthetics, because it's easier and there's dollars to be made.
Right.
It didn't have to be like that. Not to be like that.
Yeah.
So consulting, hit me up. Organic King Consulting is still here. The soil, Patrick at thesoilking.com. You can hit me up on any platform at The Soil King, YouTube, anywhere you want.
Fantastic. Well, it's been amazing having you on the show today. Thank you so much. I look forward to doing this again.
You too, man.
We'll have to do this sometime in the near future.
This is a great moment for me on here, because this is James Loud's podcast. This isn't somebody that came out a year ago with a podcast and is zinging. This guy is an OG in the industry. You look at his genetics and what he's done with the expressions, and just coming into this facility. I mean, you're a pioneer and you're a leader, man. And for me to sit on the other side of this with you, brother,
hey,
it's respect. Total respect. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.
Bada boom, bada bing. Woo! Let's go.
Let's go.